What if Lucifer wasn't the enemy, but the first liberator? He doesn't appear as the caricature of a monster. No horns, no tail. He appears as a flash of light in the darkness, the embodiment of a brilliance that unsettles the eyes of those who dwell in shadows. The oldest texts don't describe him as the Lord of Hell, but as the bearer of light, Helel ben Shahar, the morning star. Why did this luminous image turn into the symbol of absolute evil? In the Qumran scrolls, on the dead shores of the desert, his name is linked to wisdom, questioning, and the refusal to bow. But who dares to suggest that refusing obedience could be a form of loyalty to something greater? Perhaps the fall wasn't punishment, but strategy. What if the Creator didn't cast him out, but sent him on a secret mission? Revelation mentions that the star fell from heaven, bringing the key to the abyss. The abyss, according to certain mystical rabbis, is the place where truth was locked away, so humanity wouldn't find it too soon. In Gnostic texts, Lucifer is a mirror. He doesn't bring ready-made answers, but the discomfort that forces one to seek. And perhaps that's exactly why he was condemned, not for being evil, but for being dangerous to those who profit from ignorance. How many leaders fear a single question more than 1,000 swords? How many temples would crumble if the lights were turned on? They say that when man ate from the forbidden fruit, it wasn't the serpent that condemned him, but the voice that asked, "Who told you that you were naked?" Could Lucifer be that voice? The one that doesn't command, but awakens. In the Nag Hammadi archives, hidden for centuries, there are fragments describing a messenger of the dawn who reveals to mortals that the Creator is not the only God. If that's true, then the conflict in heaven wasn't between good and evil, but between those who wanted to keep the veil intact and those who wanted to tear it apart. What religion calls the fall may have been the first spiritual revolution. And what if rebellion is just the name we give to freedom when we're afraid of it? But the greatest proof that Lucifer is not what they say is hidden in the very pages of the Bible, right in plain sight. What do you think about this? Share your thoughts in the comments. The greatest secret about Lucifer isn't hidden in occult books, but in the Bible itself. We open the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, and find the famous passage, "How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn." For centuries, this has been used as proof of Lucifer's fall. But what few realize is that this text wasn't speaking about a fallen angel at all. It was speaking about a human king, the ruler of Babylon. The earliest translators, influenced by the Latin Vulgate, rendered the Hebrew term Helel ben Shahar as Lucifer, meaning light-bearer, and just like that, a poetic title became the name of the supreme enemy. Ask yourself, was it an innocent mistake or a calculated move to link any spark of rebellious light with the idea of evil? This detail becomes even stranger when we remember that in the New Testament, Jesus refers to himself as the bright morning star. Revelation 22:16. How can the same title be used for Christ and for God's supposed arch-enemy? Could it be that both share the same luminous essence, but were placed on opposite sides for convenience? In the Gnostic tradition, this wouldn't be a contradiction. To them, Lucifer is not Christ's opposite, he is his inverted reflection, the brother who chose a different path to lead toward the same light. Two messengers, two strategies. One working within the law, the other outside it. But if this light is so dangerous, who benefits from keeping it in the shadows? History shows us that every time a people awakens intellectually, empires fall. Could the narrative of the rebel angel have been constructed to smother any spark of questioning before it could grow into a fire? Here's another unsettling fact. In the book of Job, Satan is not a fallen ex-angel condemned to hell. He is described as a member of the heavenly court, speaking directly with God, carrying out authorized tasks. The eternal enemy we know today only began to take shape centuries later, through the blending of Jewish, Persian, and Christian traditions. The name Lucifer became a label, pasted over a far older archetype, the bringer of forbidden knowledge. In Mesopotamia, that role belonged to Enki, the god who defied the others to give wisdom to humanity. Among the Greeks, It was Prometheus who stole fire from the heavens to give it to mankind. Always the same pattern. Those who bring light to humanity are punished by those above. If Lucifer follows this same lineage, then his essence is not destruction, but disruption. And every disruption threatens systems that value obedience over discernment. But there is something even more disturbing. In the apocryphal Gospels, there is a passage where Christ tells his disciples that the prince of this world was placed here to test and awaken the worthy. Does this mean the enemy is part of the plan? What if he isn't outside God's will, but right at the center of it? And there is a text hidden for centuries that shows Lucifer and God acting side by side. If this touched you, like this video to help spread it. What if I told you there's a moment when God and Lucifer are on the same side? Among the least read books of the Bible lies a passage that reveals a scene many religious leaders would rather forget. Zechariah chapter 3. There, we see the high priest Joshua standing before the angel of the Lord, and beside him, Satan, not as an eternal enemy, but as the official accuser, part of a heavenly trial. The detail: God doesn't destroy Satan. On the contrary, he allows him to fulfill his role. This scene shatters the popular image of Lucifer as an eternal exile, cast out of the divine system. Here, he is part of the very heavenly council, serving a specific function. The inevitable question is, if he had truly rebelled against God, why would he be present in a heavenly courtroom alongside faithful angels? And this isn't the only instance. In the book of Job, Satan appears once again, speaking directly with the Creator, negotiating the fate of a righteous man. There's no hostility in the sense of a cosmic war between equals. There is a conversation. What does this mean? That originally, the adversary was more of a tester or examiner than a final enemy. But what happens when someone's role is to question, to test, and to reveal what is hidden? Inevitably, they become hated by those who don't want to be exposed. And perhaps this is where Lucifer began to be painted as the embodiment of evil, not for destroying, but for illuminating. In apocryphal texts, such as the Apocalypse of Adam, we find the idea that the Spirit of Light was sent to free mankind from the rule of a lesser God who kept humanity in ignorance. In some Gnostic interpretations, this spirit is identified with Lucifer. This would turn the traditional narrative upside down. He would not be the usurper, but the messenger of a higher truth. And here's a disturbing point. The Bible never says that Lucifer rules over hell. That image was born centuries later, inspired by interpretations of Dante's Divine Comedy and Renaissance paintings. In the original text, he is described as a star, a light, a messenger, attributes far closer to a bearer of knowledge than to a tyrant of darkness. If that's true, what happened to turn a heavenly agent into an eternal enemy? The answer may lie in spiritual battles, fought not in the physical realm, but on the battlefield of narrative. Whoever controls the story controls belief, and whoever controls belief controls the fate of entire empires. Lucifer may have been the first victim of a spiritual smear campaign, a strategy so effective it lasted for millennia, crossed cultures, and shaped the entire religious imagination of the West. But if this was a maneuver of power, it only worked because it erased a vital part of his essence, the link between light and wisdom. And there was a moment in history when this link between light and forbidden wisdom almost came to be revealed to the entire world, but it was erased from our collective memory. Subscribe. What comes next is even darker. There was a day when Lucifer's true essence almost came to light, but it was erased by decree. The year was AD 325. The Roman Empire was still bleeding from internal wars, and Christianity, once persecuted, was beginning to gain political power. Constantine, the emperor who claimed to be chosen by God, summoned bishops from across the empire to decide, once and for all, what would be considered legitimate faith and what would be branded heresy. What few realize is that the Council of Nicaea was not just a meeting about doctrine. It was an operation of narrative control. Among the texts reviewed were Gospels and letters that described Lucifer in a way radically different from what we know today. In them, he was not the eternal enemy, but a spirit of light who, alongside Christ, guided humanity beyond the rules imposed by lesser entities. These writings, tied to Gnostic and Essene traditions, spoke of an inner knowledge capable of freeing mankind from the manipulation of both earthly and celestial powers. But such a vision was dangerous. If the people believed salvation depended on awakening the mind and not blindly obeying an authority, the entire political religious structure would collapse. So quills tore through parchment, bonfires devoured manuscripts, and a new Lucifer was forged. No longer the bearer of light, but the supreme symbol of evil. This shift was gradual but deliberate. From that point on, any reference to light that did not come directly from Christ was seen as a threat. The very term forbidden wisdom became synonymous with witchcraft, heresy, or a pact with the devil. It was a symbolic amputation, stripping Lucifer of his light and leaving only his shadow. And here lies the most disturbing detail. Some council records, preserved in secret archives and surviving only in later fragments, mention heated debates over the role of luminescent beings in the creation of the world. In one such passage, now virtually inaccessible to the public, a bishop accuses another of wanting to reveal to the people the true name of the one who enlightens the mind. That name, according to marginal notes, was Hellel. Had those words entered the canon, our perception of Lucifer would be completely different. We might not see him as the destroyer, but as the first spark of consciousness given to humanity, and the line between rebellion and enlightenment would be far thinner and far more dangerous to those in power. But the story didn't end with the council. Centuries later, secret orders attempted to recover those fragments and reintroduce the idea of Lucifer as a symbol of the pursuit of knowledge. Monks, alchemists, and occultists scattered clues in books, works of art, and cathedrals. To those who knew how to read the symbols, the message was the same: light does not belong to a single name. And one of these clues has survived intact. Carved in the stone of a cathedral everyone knows, but few truly understand. Share this with someone who needs to see what's been hidden. Thousands walk through its doors every year, but few realize they are looking straight at Lucifer. In the heart of Paris rises the imposing Cathedral of Notre Dame, one of the most famous landmarks of Christianity, a dystille, the visited by pilgrims and tourists alike, but also by students of the occult, who claim the forbidden light still survives there in plain sight. Amid the gargoyles and stained glass, there is a figure the tour guides rarely mention, a radiant angel with serene features holding a torch. No horns, no black wings, only light symbolism and a defiant stance. According to 19th century restoration records, the image was inspired by an older figure described as the bearer of the dawn. For most, just an architectural detail. For the initiated, a signature left by builders tied to esoteric orders. The mystery deepens when you notice the statue's placement. It faces east, the direction of the sunrise, the same point that, since antiquity, has been linked to the morning star. Coincidence? Or a silent message that Lucifer's true essence was never destroyed, only encoded? Gothic architecture, far from being purely religious expression, carried messages for those who could read them. Alchemical symbols, sacred proportions, and ambiguous imagery were woven into the structures to preserve forbidden knowledge. Master stonemasons, often connected to discreet brotherhoods, understood that stone could safeguard truths that books could not. Records from the French compagnonnage indicate that certain stained glass windows in Notre Dame depict not only biblical scenes, but also allegories of the search for enlightenment. In one of them, almost hidden, an angel holds a glowing sphere, the same symbol used in grimoires to represent the primordial light given to mankind. Some researchers link this sphere to Prometheus's stolen fire, the egg of light from Egyptian myth, and of course, Lucifer's torch. But why preserve such symbols inside a Christian cathedral? where Lucifer's image should be banished? The answer may lie in the medieval concept of knowledge itself. Even under the Church's authority, some monks and builders believed truth could never belong to a single interpretation. They hid messages in stone and glass, ensuring that even if the official version prevailed, another story would survive in the margins of the art. And there is something even more unsettling. Reports suggest that before the 2019 fire, some researchers had requested restricted access to the cathedral's oldest sections. Among the documents they allegedly found was an architectural plan marked with the outline of an 8-pointed star, the traditional symbol of the morning star. If true, it would mean that for centuries, Notre Dame was not just a Christian temple, but also a monument to something far older, the radiant essence that survives beneath the shadow of damnation. And this isn't the only time the morning star has appeared in Christian temples. There's an even older site where it shines at the very heart of the altar. Have you ever wondered about that? Share your thoughts in the comments. There is a Christian temple where the morning star shines, right in the heart of the altar. Inside the Basilica of San Clemente in Rome lies an architectural detail few ever notice. Amid golden mosaics and biblical symbols, one design has endured through the ages, an 8-pointed star, carved precisely at the center of the altar. To the casual eye, it's just an ornament. To those who understand symbolic language, it's a disturbing sign, the universal mark of the morning star. The 8-pointed star is a symbol that spans millennia. In the Middle East, it represented Ishtar, the goddess associated with the light of dawn. In Hebrew tradition, the same symbol marked passages tied to rebirth and spiritual illumination. In early Christianity, it was linked to the resurrection of Christ. And intriguingly, to the very title Isaiah uses to describe Hallel ben Shahar, morning star. This means that in this altar, Christ and Lucifer share the same symbol, something irreconcilable for modern theology, but natural to ancient traditions that saw both as bearers of light, even if by different paths. What's most unsettling is that, according to archaeological records, this basilica was built over an ancient Roman temple dedicated to Mithras, the Persian sun god adopted by the Roman legions. In Mithraic rites, the initiate underwent trials of courage and wisdom, and in the end was bathed in the light of the morning star, an initiation strikingly similar to the journey toward enlightenment described in Gnostic texts. With the rise of official Christianity, many pagan temples were converted, but their symbols did not vanish. They were absorbed and reinterpreted. What was once solar light became known as the glory of Christ. What was once forbidden knowledge became divine revelation. Yet beneath it all, the same symbolic language endured. This explains why, even in Catholic liturgy, there are hymns that call Christ Lucifer matutinus, not as the enemy, but as the light that conquers darkness. Yes, in Latin, the word Lucifer can still refer to Jesus, something that, to a modern believer, would sound almost like heresy. If he was right, Lucifer's mission was never over. It has simply entered its final stage, and some signs that this transition has begun are already visible to those who know where to look. And one of those signs is about to happen right before the eyes of the entire world. Subscribe. The truth doesn't end here. The world is about to witness something history books will never record. Some researchers believe that signs appear when the plan becomes inevitable. And according to fragments of the Testamentum Lucis, one of these signs would begin to emerge in the great centers of power, in plain sight, yet invisible to anyone who didn't know how to read the symbols. The first clue happened during an international ceremony broadcast live to millions. Amid flags, speeches, and spotlights, an image slipped past most viewers. The projection of an 8-pointed star over the altar of one of the world's most famous conference halls. It wasn't digital, nor an ordinary lighting effect. It was an architectural coincidence that aligned perfectly with the morning sun's coordinates, as if the cosmos itself were signaling its presence. Occult scholars who track Astronomical and geomantic patterns insist that this star never appears by chance. It marks the intersection of energy along ancient ley lines, terrestrial power routes once used by ancient cultures to connect temples, sanctuaries, and monuments. And at each point, references to the morning star and to Lucifer's forbidden light are unmistakable. In a passage that feels almost ominous, the manuscript states, "The star will first manifest among those who rule without knowing, and the people will see without understanding." And that is exactly what happened. World leaders ignored it. Ordinary citizens filmed it, and the symbols spread across social media without explanation. For the attentive observer, however, it was perfectly clear. The signature of the light bringer, visible yet still unrecognized. Another unsettling detail emerges when comparing historical records. Temples, basilicas, and ancient palaces bearing the morning star often coincide with moments of social upheaval or transformation. For those who study the Testamentum Lucis, the interpretation is obvious. Lucifer acts not as a destroyer, but as a catalyst. His role is to create tension, awaken awareness, and test whether humanity truly desires the knowledge it was given. And there's evidence that this cycle has been repeating for centuries. From vanished civilizations to religious empires, the morning star appears before events that altered the course of history. Wars, scientific breakthroughs, or philosophical movements that challenged entrenched dogmas. Now, in the 21st century, the manuscript suggests the next great test is beginning. But the greater question remains: who will be able to decode the sign before it becomes irreversible? Because, according to the text, the real impact will not be visible until the majority has closed its eyes to the light, mistaking Lucifer for darkness. What if the sign isn't just symbolic, and Lucifer's mission is about to touch lives in a direct, undeniable way? Tag someone who would dare to watch until the end. The world is about to witness something that history books will never record. Some researchers believe that signs emerge when the plan becomes inevitable. And according to fragments of the Testamentum Lucis, one of these signs would begin to appear in the great centers of power, visible to all, yet unseen by those who cannot read the symbols. The first hint came during an international ceremony broadcast live. Amid flags, speeches, and spotlights, one image slipped past most viewers: the projection of an 8-pointed star over the altar of one of the world's most famous conference halls. It wasn't digital, nor a standard lighting effect. It was an architectural coincidence, aligning perfectly with the morning sun's coordinates, as if the cosmos itself were marking its presence. Occult scholars who study astronomical and geomantic patterns claim this star never appears by accident. It marks the intersection of energy along ancient ley lines, pathways of terrestrial power once used by civilizations to connect temples, sanctuaries, and monuments. And at each of these points, references to the morning star and Lucifer's forbidden light are undeniable. In one of its most unsettling passages, the manuscript states, "The star will first appear among those who rule without knowing, and the people will see without understanding." And that is exactly what happened. World leaders ignored it. Ordinary citizens filmed it, and the symbols spread across social media without explanation. For the watchful eye, however, it was unmistakable, the signature of the light bringer, visible yet still unrecognized. Another disturbing pattern emerges when historical accounts are compared. Temples, basilicas, and ancient palaces bearing the morning star often coincide with moments of social upheaval or transformation. For those who study the Testamentum Lucis, the meaning is clear. Lucifer acts not as a destroyer, but as a catalyst. His role is to create tension, awaken awareness, and test whether humanity truly desires the knowledge it was given. Evidence suggests this cycle has repeated for centuries. From lost civilizations to religious empires, the morning star appears before events that shift the course of history. Wars, scientific breakthroughs, or philosophical movements that challenged sacred dogmas. Now, in the 21st century, the manuscript warns that the next great test is already beginning. But the greater question remains: who will decode the sign before it becomes irreversible? Because, according to the text, the true impact will only be revealed once the majority has closed its eyes to the light, mistaking Lucifer for darkness. What if the sign isn't just symbolic, and Lucifer's mission is about to touch lives in a direct, undeniable way? Tag someone who would dare to watch until the end. When the light finally touches the eyes, no one can pretend ignorance anymore. The sign that began quietly revealing itself is not just a symbol, it is an experience. Across cities around the world, people have reported strange dreams, visions of an 8-pointed star shining above temples, palaces and centers of power. Some describe feeling warmth, others a chilling cold, but all share the same sensation, an expanded awareness, and questions they never dared to ask surfacing on their own. Occult researchers, Gnostics, and even historians unanimously identified the pattern. Each appearance aligns with ancient energy points, intersections of temples and power sites, binding the morning star to the very fabric of human reality. What once seemed purely symbolic, according to the Testamentum Lucis, is becoming literal. But its impact is not only spiritual, it is social. Unexpected political movements emerge. Scientific breakthroughs that defy dogma accelerate. Cultural and philosophical waves spread, sparking debates and collective identity crises. The light of Lucifer, or the awareness he awakens, forces humanity to confront what has always been hidden: freedom, truth, and responsibility. And as the manuscript foretold, confusion is inevitable. Many mistake Lucifer for absolute evil, interpreting the signs as disorder, chaos, or threat. But according to the text, this is the final test to separate those who seek understanding from those who rush to condemn. The morning star does not promise comfort. It promises perception, a perception that cannot be turned off. Disturbing accounts have surfaced of individuals who, during meditation or lucid dreams, saw figures made of both light and shadow, revealing the duality. Lucifer is neither purely rebel nor solely light-bringer, but a catalyst for human choice. He presents the option to accept the light with responsibility or to reject it, condemning oneself to ignorance. Meanwhile, secret societies have begun to move, following patterns described in the manuscript. Ancient records suggest that the morning star never rises without awakening the guardians of tradition, those who seek to suppress the truth. And now, observers report that leaders of various orders are acting with urgency, trying to contain what they cannot control. The spread of the light and awareness Lucifer set in motion. The Testamentum Lucis warns the peak of this manifestation has yet to come. The greater sign, the one that will visibly connect humanity to its long-forgotten essence, is about to emerge. And when it does, there will be no turning back. The light cannot be ignored, and the old dogmas will be forced to confront the reality they have long denied. The final sign is approaching, and it will be impossible to ignore. The world will see Lucifer not as myth, but as the agent of human choice. If this unsettled you, that was the point. Leave a comment. What if the truth we fear isn't about Lucifer, but about ourselves? We've reached the climax of this forbidden investigation. Every sign, symbol, and manuscript converges on a single, unsettling idea. Lucifer was never just the rebel or the bearer of darkness. He is, above all, a mirror, a reflection of human consciousness, of the curiosity that dares to challenge dogma, and of the light that longs to be understood. The Testamentum Lucis, the Forgotten Gospel, and the Armenian Codex all point to the same message. Lucifer's mission was never to destroy, but to awaken. He brought to humanity the spark that had been denied for millennia, the spark to think, to question, to choose. And every symbol, from the 8-pointed star on altars to the projections that appear over palaces and temples, is not a warning of destruction, but an invitation to awakened awareness. Across centuries, religions, governments, and secret orders have tried to erase this truth. They branded Lucifer as the enemy, locking his image inside myths of wickedness. But the reality is far more complex. He embodies what everyone fears, the freedom to think, to perceive, to take full responsibility for every choice. What the world calls rebellion is, in truth, the courage to look beyond the narratives we've been given. And if we trace the patterns of the past, everything aligns. The morning star emerges before intellectual, philosophical and spiritual revolutions. Each time humanity draws near to a greater truth, Lucifer's shadow appears, a reminder that light cannot exist without challenge, without awareness of what is being questioned. The manuscript's prophecy of the final sign is not one of destruction, it is one of revelation, an event that will force the world to see that the line between light and darkness has never been so sharp, and that what we've always feared may be exactly what we need. The ultimate choice will not be imposed, it will be internal, and each human being will have to decide whether to embrace the light as knowledge or reject it as a threat. At its core, Lucifer's essence is neither malice nor punishment. It is consciousness. It is forbidden wisdom, ancient light, and unrestricted questioning. He confronts us with what we fear most, to see ourselves without masks, without someone else's narrative, and to take ownership of the power to understand. If this is the truth, why are we still keeping our eyes closed? And if all of this is real, write your truth below.